As you heard, Marcus's mother was a friend of mine, Sue Daring, and she met Rowan in the Bat Mitzvah class. So, dear friends and honored guests, get ready to dive into the gritty reality of crime solving in Chicago, far removed from the tidy endings we see on TV. Our speaker is someone who lives and breathes the real deal. Marcus Shepard is a dedicated detective with the Chicago Police Department. He brings 2 decades of hands-on experience to his role, from tracking violent crimes, robberies, and special victims cases to navigating the complexity of financial crimes. Marcus has seen it all. Marcus's story doesn't stop there. Beyond his impressive police work, he's a passionate educator, serving an adjunct professor, and he mentors the next generation of public safety professionals. His background is even more diverse, with a proud history of service in the United States Air Force during Operation Desert Storm, where he specialized in gynecology and I always have a problem saying this, obstetrics. As a physician's assistant, he has helped bring over 30,000 babies into this world. So please welcome Detective Marcus Shepard. All right, if we can spotlight Marcus. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And will you please, Marcus, begin with a snapshot of your life, beginning with when you were a little boy, what did you want to grow up and be?
Morning. My first ambition was to be a doctor. I think that's why I navigated to the medical field in the Air Force. Um, I did it until I did it for 17 years, and um, when I got out of when I began to think that I wanted to go back into being a PA in the real world, because in the military, most of you know, or most of you don't know, the military gives you the opportunity to do things that you can't do in the real world without licensure or certification. Well, they do certify you, but it's through their own grade and their own pathways. So when you come out of the military, you still have, like, I had a national registry of an EMT, so I went to Mecklenburg County in North Carolina with my son's mother, and I was able to do that. But maybe about 10 years after being back home in Chicago, I decided that I was going to apply for PA school and apply for the police department. And guess what? Guess who won? This
Wonderful. And just for you to know, Marcus, you have another guest just popped in to support you. Linda Overton, the Senior Director, Human Resources and Global Payroll Lead with Hilton. So thank you, Linda. All right, so tell us, how do you compare training in the police to training in the military?
it's very similar for those members of the Golden Gate Book Club. And first, I should have started with thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. For those who have military or FBI experience or any type of law enforcement experience, the first thing that you know is that the military, as well as the police, is they strip you. They strip you down of your identity, and they teach you teamwork. And then then they concentrate their focus on perfecting what your talent is so that you become a stronger team member for that direction or that portion. I've been blessed because I'm I don't know if I have ADHD or SDHD, but I like to learn. And so as you heard Patricia speak of my background, I've worked everywhere. I've worked from animal crimes and organized crime to financial crimes to now criminal registration. And I think that every time I get to a point where maybe not I'm not complacent or stagnant, I just want to learn something new. So um, in 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 stripping us down, the military then trains you how to defend the country. The police department teaches you how to defend the municipality, the rights of people. Believe me, as someone said that they called the police and not only did the police show up, but airborne one of the 101st showed up. The 101st is they're gonna fix the problem a whole different
All right. Well, most of us who know you with the special victims unit, and one of the first questions I asked you, how close is the TV show to reality?
Well, the truth is this. This is what I tell all my victims. Please don't be angry with me. I have your case. I'm going to figure it out, but I promise you it won't be resolved in 48 minutes with commercials.
Okay, yeah. So tell us about special victims.
So I had a special victims case on when I worked midnights. I worked everything. The responsibility of the responding detective on midnights is to take the case and handle it to the furthest point that they can. Of course, my sergeant wasn't really happy with me, so he told me to keep the case. And in this particular case, I had a young lady and a boyfriend who had been fighting all day. The boyfriend had been smoking marijuana because that's the natural, normal cause that people do now because it's been legalized to some extent. And she called 911, and while she was on the phone, he was chasing her around the kitchen. While he was on the phone with the 911 operator, which was recorded by OMC, our Office of Emergency Management Communications, he punched her in her mouth and knocked her tooth out. This is now a felony because he has caused permanent disfigurement. Even as minor as knocking someone's tooth out, it became a permanent disfigurement. He continued to chase her. She stayed on the phone. And at that point, she went into the kitchen. When she ran in the kitchen, she grabbed the kitchen knife and she put 2 holes right in the middle of both his hands. So, of course, I get the call. I go to the scene and it looks like a homicide. And I've already visited with the victim and got her side of the story. I've listened to the recording almost immediately to decipher who the aggressor was. And I get done interviewing her. I go to the house. The evidence tech shows up, and they go, "It's Detective Shepard. Do you want me to take samples of this?" And I said, "Not really. I know whose blood it is." I said, "Why don't you just take pictures? Take one sample in the kitchen because that's where the situation occurred, and we'll go from there." So I then go back to my office after I visited the victim. And the first thing I do is I speak to the detective who visited the offender. And uh, it was Detective Wiggum. And the funny thing is, his dad's name was Chief Wiggum. And for those who watched The Simpsons, it wasn't him. Okay. But Wiggum was he was a little bit different as a detective. You had to kind of ask him what he asked the person. Did it make any sense? Because he was a newer detective too. And so I got his story and I called him and I called him and I said, victim number one, I don't even remember his name. We'll call him Mr. Jones. Okay. He has
Right.
some title. Mr. Jones, how are you? He goes, I'm good. He goes, I'm Detective Shepard. I don't work for you. I don't work for the victim. I work for the city of Chicago. My job is to find out the facts of the case and unbiasedly put them on paper and figure out who I need to charge and when I need to charge him. But I've already figured that out. He goes, really? Why? I said, because it's recorded on a 911 call that you punched her in the mouth. And at that time, you knocked her tooth out, causing permanent disfigurement. And in fear of her life, she then retaliated by grabbing a knife and cutting you in your hands. He goes, man, I'm in the hospital. I'm bleeding. I can't write. I said, you know what? You're lucky that you're not dead because there's so many parts of your hand that if she would have hit them, you would have probably bled out in a matter of moments. And he goes, well, does it help that I'm a veteran? I said, it does. You're probably going to get good legal help. I said, but I'll see you tomorrow morning. Well, I won't really see you. We're going to do a minimus. You'll be charged, and one of the police officers will represent you in court because when we have to hospitalize people, whether it's the victim or the offender, they have to appear in court within 24 hours of being charged. And it went well. He took a plea, and I think his plea was 2 years of probation, 18 months of time without any good time. So, the one thing that you guys have to know about police cases um, is the two most dangerous calls are domestics and traffic stops. We never know what we're gonna get. It's like, Forrest Gump. It's like a box of chocolates, right? Um, you don't know if the person has a gun, if they have a weapon, if they're within their senility or within their ability to have a conversation, if they're having a mental crisis, and those usually go wrong. The one thing that I've learned about domestics is the minute you put handcuffs on the boyfriend, no matter how mad the girlfriend is, even though she's got a black eye, she's now on your back and you're having a fight with both. So
Well, in that case, Marcus, I hope you're going to tell me the woman had enough sense to leave him.
oh, she did, most definitely. She got most of domestics, especially in cases like this, we push for them to go down to our domestic violence warrant section and get an order of
Yeah,
protection immediately. And she did. They were done. But it doesn't always happen like that because remember, when we leave, they love them even that much more.
yeah. All right. Well, you told me that you often give citizens advice before they take action. In financial crimes, tell us about Mr. Turner.
Oh, Mr. Turner. So understand this. I'm not really a detective all the time. I'm more of a psychiatrist. So Mr. Turner filed a case of forgery against his ex-wife. And what happened in this case and situation is, and for those who don't know, I don't know about in California or wherever you might be locally, Texas or England, forgery has no statute of limitations. It's treated as a child crime. So anytime we have information that someone actually used your information, forged your name or forged your identity, we charge it as a forgery because we can charge you at 99. We can charge you 2 months after you did it, 6 months after you did it. We can charge you on your deathbed, and you'll be a convicted felon. But he went after forgery charge. And what happened initially was another detective investigated it, and of course he didn't want to do anything with it, so he suspended it indefinitely. Well, nobody knew that this guy was an employee of the city of Chicago and had lots of friends. So we get a call from the alderman, and we have aldermen or alder creatures, as we call them. And for those who are familiar with New York, they have 50 aldermen, and they have twice the amount of population. We have 50 here, and these guys are always intervening in all kinds of governmental business. So the alderman calls, who was a retired retired Chicago police sergeant, and said that something needed to be done for his friend.
Mhm.
So the first thing I do is I have to call the victim because you have to have a victim to have a crime. And I said, "Good morning, Mr. Turner. This is Detective Shepard from Financial Crimes. I have a case here where there was no financial loss, but you're claiming that someone forged your name." He goes, well, in my best voice of him, because he was upset. Yeah, yeah, we're in civil court going through a divorce now, and my wife, she's already got a boyfriend in Atlanta, and 3 months ago, she went down to the courthouse and filed paperwork and signed my name and paid the fee. And I said, well, are you still willing to want to get divorced? And he goes, I am. I said, and you're upset because she filled out the paperwork first and paid your fee? He goes, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm mad about. Well, uh, I continued to let him speak. He said that he had a good lawyer. I said, you don't have a good lawyer because this is the kind of issue, even though it's criminal, that can be handled in civil court. People don't realize that the burden of proof in criminal court is much greater than in civil. But I asked him, what did he want? What do you want? And he goes, I want a charge. And I said, let me talk to you for a minute, Mr. Turner. I said, do you have children? He goes, I have children. I said, do you have grown children? He goes, I have grown children. I said, do you know that you're going to go to a wedding, childbirth, a baby shower, graduations for these kids, as well as their kids? And he goes, yeah, I understand that. I said, and you want to charge your now divorcing spouse or significant other with a felony, which means that if you made more money, now she might go after alimony. He goes, well, I never thought about that, detective. I said, yeah. I said, because if she doesn't make any money and you made all the money, now she can go after some of your paycheck. He goes, well, what should I do? I said, well, what do you think you should do? I said, do you want to have that kind of war between your kids, through your family? He goes, well, not really. I said, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we suspend the case today? That doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean that I can't open it back up. Let's just simply suspend the case. And so that if you have a change of heart, I can actually close this for, for the fact that you don't want to prosecute. But I said, right now, I said, you should talk to your lawyer and see what he or she can do. And I said, the second thing you should do is you should think about the legacy of your family. They all have your name, correct? He goes, yeah. I said, well, let's do that. He called me back the next day and he goes, well, my wife is a nurse. And I said, okay. And I said, is there any particular reason you said that? And he goes, no, not really. Well, being the detective that I was, I figured out why he wanted to press charges. You all know that anyone who has a professional license will lose that license once they're convicted of a felony. And his thing is he wanted his wife to be convicted of a felony so that she can no longer work as a nurse. And he called me back the following day and was apologetic and told me simply close it, exceptionally refusal to prosecute. And so sometimes it's just taking the time to get to know the people, even though you don't have a lot of time to do that. Because in financial crimes, I probably average 24 new cases a day. Every case that goes through the police system under a classification that fits our area, we're assigned to follow up on those cases. Every once in a while, our case management offices has the right and the responsibility of simply closing out a case because it doesn't meet the criteria based on what's in the narrative. But even in those cases, they reach out to the victim and tell them, is there more to the story, so that the victim isn't feeling like a victim from the police.
Now tell us about Mr. Weiss, because this was a funny story with the brown paper bag.
All right. So I worked in financial and I got this case. And Mr. Weiss, who actually, believe it or not, called me about 6 months ago, and I've been out of financial for about almost 2 years in December. He called me and he wanted to know what was going on with his case. So I read his case. Do I have the case? I might have the case report around, but Mr. Weiss met, we'll call him John, offender number named John, and then the other guy's name is Otis. So there's two people that he deals with, and so he met someone on Adam versus Adam, or Adam meets Adam, which is a gay website, and he really got interested in John, and so much to the point where John began to ask him for money. And so prior to filing his police report, when John was asking him for money, what he would do is he would take 30,000 out of his 401k, remove it from his bank account, put it in a brown paper bag, and send it to his buddy Otis in an Uber. So I
So,
know this is I know this isn't the question session, but I hope that no one is sending money to someone that they don't know in an Uber and drawing it from their 401k. But what happened was he started to give him more information, which he didn't divulge in the beginning. And let me say this, in the beginning, he didn't even have time to give me an interview. I had to call him back several times. So he was out of a total of $700,000.
for
He took
somebody he hadn't met.
someone he hadn't met. Then he began to meet them places. He'd take them shopping at Best Buy. He'd buy them, things that they wanted. He met John and his girlfriend, and he just wanted to know when he was going to have this unimaginable, magical situation with John, because he really liked John, and he knew that John. That's what he wanted. He wanted to have some form of intercourse with John. So of course John started backing up and saying, "Well, you can have intercourse with me, but my girlfriend has to be there too. She doesn't have to join in, but she has to be there." And that was the whole.
Well, this is not part of the story you told me before.
Yeah, well, now I'm telling you. So I'm a
Okay,
detective.
good.
I don't even remember what the judge asked me.
Okay,
So
good.
but in the end, he cleaned out his 401k. Um, he said that this individual had access to his account, which he never did, and I couldn't go any further with the case because he was an active part of being a victim. He gave him everything that he needed, and this isn't even a deceptive practice confidence game, which is one of the most common UCRs or uniform codes that we use, which is set up by the FBI. Thank you guys. Um, that that we couldn't do anything for him. And he called back about 6 months ago to see where his case was. And I told him his case was stagnant. One, because he wasn't cooperative, and two, he was a cooperating victim in his own demise of financial reckoning.
All right, Marcus, tell us about the scariest moment of being in your police career.
Okay, it was a search warrant, and I was that guy that hit the door with the big ram and announces the office, and it was a search warrant for guns and drugs on the south side of Chicago. And I hit the door, and then I run to the back of the line. The shield takes over, and we enter with like a 12-man team. And so the guy that came out of the building and ran back in the building when he said, "Oh, the police are here," um, he ran upstairs. And so we were clearing the house. I went upstairs with the sergeant. Uh, we're we're doing one of the things that we call cutting the cake, where I'm looking at the corner, taking a step up, presenting my gun, looking, and so forth. And I get to the top of the stairs, and here's the guy that ran upstairs with God knows what. And so the great thing about being old school police is I have not upgraded to striker fire. I have lots of striker fire guns, but I haven't upgraded. So I have a double action gun. And for those who don't know, double action gun just simply means that in two separate places of pulling the trigger, I can actually stop without firing a bullet. And so I turn the corner, and now he's got a little kid in his right in his left hand, but I can't see his right hand. And so I begin to tell him to drop the child. I say it one more time, and then I start slowly pulling the trigger, aiming at his head. And at that point, he dropped the kid. He got handcuffed, and I think I was more scared about having the absolute power of either locking someone up or taking their life in a matter of seconds. And I'm glad that in my 20 plus years that I've never had to fire my gun at someone. But I promise you, I have taken a lot of people down the block, feet up, face down, fighting.
All right, good. Now, how many times have you pulled your gun while working?
Oh, probably over 1,000. I did traffic stops by myself on the west side of
Mm,
Chicago. The west
mm.
side of Chicago is the capital of homicides in the nation. As you all know, that Chicago has led the nation and probably in the world in homicides. But when you're working by yourself, 99 as we call it, because you hear all the time 10-4, 1099. In Chicago, 10-4 means that it's a two-man unit. 1099 means you're by yourself. But when you pull over a car full of four drug dealers, and you know they're drug dealers, and you got to get out and you got to go through them or go through the vehicle, your gun is usually lifted. The one thing is, since I've been out of patrol for the last 7 years as a detective, I found out recently, well, I didn't find out recently, I found out when it came about, that now if you have a pointing incident where you actually take your gun out of a low position to a pointed position, at that point in time, you have to make a notification on your radio to OMC, and you have to just simply tell them your beat number and that you did point your weapon, and then you have to do paperwork because of the loss. So over
Now,
1,000.
okay. All right. Now that we have cameras everywhere, does that make your job easier?
It does and it doesn't. For those who, as I always say that, for those who don't know or don't pay attention, the Constitution is creeping up on its 250th year, right? In 2 years. Um, our roadmap is old, and laws were established for people who want to follow them. My best lesson is I tell people that if someone the right to bear arms meant in 1776 that if you came to George Washington's house to steal his slaves or steal his property, he had the right to shoot back at the British or whomever was taking him. Um, our our age, the people that roam the world, there's more there's more mental illness out here than there are criminals. I promise you. Seem to think that if you look at them wrong, well, they have the right to bear arms. Um, so, in relation to the question that you actually asked me, um, was what?
Well, it doesn't matter. Just keep going. All right, good. It
Um,
was really about cameras. Does it make our job easier or your
is
job
that
easier?
that if you're that if you're doing your job the right way, you have no worries. But most people have two phones in their pockets, and they videotape everything, everything. So it hasn't made my job easier, but for those, and we all know that there are rogue officers out there who have kind of played by their own rules. Um, it has made losing their jobs, going to jail, um, much more prevalent in this day and age of policing. The George Floyd situation will change policing forever, not just because the police did it wrong, but because it was videotaped and then the aftermath that occurred with it.
Now, what should we as civilians know about the dark web?
Know that it exists. I just showed it last week at a presentation with Hail.org in Chicago on their 30th annual state meeting. Um, and so with that, I simply say this: there is a dark web. It's a part of the web that's prevalent, more prevalent than the part that you use. What you use, like on Google and on the surface, is about this video said about 10 years ago, it said about 4%. It's probably about 2% now. There's more activity on the dark web. But I tell you this, don't venture out to find out what's on the dark web, because all of those alphabets, FBI, CIA, DEA, DSS, that's Secret Service, Homeland Security, they will be at your house, and you don't have to have called them. They just know, because every computer has a fingerprint. Even if you have a VPN, they know how to read through that now, and they take it very seriously. You can buy anything from drugs to a kidney if you're on a transplant list, to a murder for hire. Everything is there, and it was derived in 1969 by naval intelligence. It's something that's American derived that has turned into the hands of the wrong people. So please, if you see anything that says torque or onion or dark web, don't click on it. But for basic safety, what I tell all my students, as well as people that are willing to listen, that if you see something in italics with misspelled words, or it's not an email that you're used to, simply delete it. And if it says delete and report, by all means, you can do that too.
All right, good. Now, when you worked with organized crime and gang investigations, you wrote a lot of search warrants against convicted felons.
Yes. And in the state of Illinois, they make you sign that you sign off like this 30 um identity, identims that you will not do or cannot function in. And one of the things that we found, with I worked on animal crimes team, and we mostly investigated dog fighting. But the biggest thing that we did was possession possession of a dog by of a dog by felon that is unsterilized or non-spaded or deemed vicious. And that usually gave us the end, because most of the guys that know that life, the first thing they do, Patricia and fellow listeners from the Golden Gate Book Club, is they go out and they get two pit bulls and they start shop up right away, and they dare you to cross the line. And so the dog was usually the way in. The only thing is we had to be a little bit creative in how we got our information. We already knew they were a drug dealer. We already knew that they were a gangbanger, and we already knew based on the activity on the block, because every block has a Miss Kravitz, right, or Mr. Kravitz. We knew that they were up and moving. So what we would do is we'd walk on the block in plain clothes, um, and say something like, "Hey, that's a beautiful set of pit bulls, blue-eyed pits. He goes, "Are they ready to mass produce?" He goes, "What do you mean?" He said, "Are you going to mate them?" "Oh no, those are two boys, but you got a girl?" And I go, "Are they good? Can they go?" He goes, "Yeah." And usually we watched the house for the whole day because most of the big stuff was in the garage. And so by the end of the day, once we saw them walk back in the house or go to the garage, we'd write the search warrant, and the next day we'd hit it. And you'd be surprised what they get back into so in such a short time of being released from jail.
All right, now, in the pre-meeting where we were chatting, you were giving us a snapshot, so I'm sure everyone would be interested in the preparation for the National Convention. And are you doing, and have you been trained to do anything differently because Trump was shot? Does that have anything to do with your training now?
Not us. That would be SWAT and our special units that'll be assigned to the inner core. The great thing is we've had plenty of training. We've had a whole lot of training. We're under consent decree. The DOG thinks that we're useless some days, and we've had to constantly put up our training, as well as the fact that you all have had some interaction with police. And it's sad, but some places they don't require you to have a degree or even know how to really read, right? More than a diagram or a map or how to figure out a crime. So training has been at the highest realm of or highest responsibility at the realm of our leadership. So I actually had training last Monday for mass arrest, and so I'll be working in the DNC. I'll be working in the juvenile detention center because if it goes up like it did with George Floyd, then we are most definitely going to respond a different way. We're gonna lock people up who become violent or begin to destroy property in the city. We have a new superintendent. He's been the superintendent for about a year, a little bit over a year, because he was Brandon Johnson's first pick. He's from the city. He worked in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, Englewood. For those who are from Englewood, California, or like it, I'm sorry that Englewood everywhere is scary, but he's a real hands-on kind of guy. And one thing that a lot of people don't ever say when they listen to him speak, he is our subject matter expert for use of force. He has redevised the chart multiple times as use of force has changed over the George Floyd incident. So he has taken the visitors because if you didn't know, the Republican National Convention only had 12 to 14 arrests, and they had one homicide by a Columbus police officer for somebody who was homeless and was in crisis, and it was in a neighborhood. And so what our superintendent decided to do is he decided to keep all of the visitors near the politicians and keep the officers that work those areas in those areas, so that if there's someone who's in crisis, then by all means they can get the treatment, the care, and the hands-on attention that they need instead of being shot. Um, and as far as we've had to go to training where they teach us how to file in as a unit, run out, and pull people in for arrest. Because um, when we did the NATO, which I did in 2012, I think it was, we had we had maybe 200 arrests. But I'm suspecting, since I told you the number 12 and 14, that we're probably going to have 1,000 times that. We're going to probably have 1,200 to 1,400 arrests this week. We have a lot of angry protest groups. As you know, the Democratic Party is in the White House now, and they keep continuing to upset the natives. Uh, as recently as last night, they just voted for a major sale of weapons to Israel. And the one thing that these young followers don't understand is that this is over a 15 or 20-year span. So even though we sold them F5, some of our F5 fighter jets, it's not like they're getting them tomorrow. They're going to get them in 10 or 15 years, but they don't see it as that. It's a war zone there. We're assisting, and we shouldn't.
All
So
right, good. Well, Do you, if you arrested that many people, you have somewhere to put them?
We do. We do. They have been preparing for this. The juvenile center will be different than where the immediate people will be. They've actually opened up an old courthouse with a holding cell. They've worked something out with the Cook County sheriffs for those who've seen Cook County Jail. Lucky you, right? Because I heard one of the attendees got arrested in '68. So they have ample place to put them, as well as the fact that all those neighboring police departments have been recruited to cover all of the boundaries of Chicago. They already have they have police powers. If it touches the borderline of Chicago and it's within 2 blocks, um, the Illinois Senate and Congress stated some hundreds of years ago that if you're chasing someone from Harwood Heights into Chicago, which touches our border, then by all means you have police rights there. So what I've heard is that those neighboring towns have taken over, and the towns that are further out are now going to help those neighboring towns. And we have an influx of Homeland Security, FBI, CIA, and DEA, as well as ATF here now. And so parking restraints started today. People are mad. For my friend that was in Paris, I get it. For the safety of the politicians and the athletes, and it stinks, but it's gonna make our job a whole lot easier. And
All
the
right.
crazy thing is, does anybody know how long the national convention is? You know, Patricia, it's
No.
three. It's the 19th through the 22nd, but they've shut the city down for 15 days.
Oh, okay. All right. So Carl Walsh, Janice Litvin, and Tom Kowalski have popped in. So, oh, and Don Persky, nice to see you. Good. So let's see. I have more questions, but let's see what your questions are. Please put your hand up, uh, either visually or with the icon. Let's see. Do
Bill
we have
Buchanan.
any?
Bill Buchanan.
Okay, Bill Buchanan. All right, Marcus and Susan Rowan. So Bill and then Susan.
Okay.
Good morning, Marcus. Thanks for joining us this morning. And Patricia, thanks for calling on me because I have a meeting with a first responder who's going to help us with this wilderness training program in about half an hour. So Marcus, just sitting here fascinated with your tales because I spent 3 years in Chicago with the squad that worked theft from interstate shipment, among other things. And we found ourselves working with that unit in the Chicago Police Department. And there was one area, it was called the Belt Railway, that nobody wanted to work. I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out. So I went there. It was a nest of, it was like the old fable of the 30 thieves. There was a sign on the supervisor's door that said, it's not 30 thieves down in the Belt Railway, it's 30,000 thieves. So anyway, we had a lot of work to do down there, but we did work with the Chicago Police Department, but we found occasionally that they would work up a case and be just about ready to take it to the DA. And they would give us a call and say, hey, let's have a cup of coffee. We'll talk about this. And you know why? Because if we took it over and it fit our statutes, the penalty, the sentence would be much more severe than the local, jurisdiction would afford. So we had a very good working relationship with them, and we did a lot of good work down there. So I'd have to say, this is my wife and I. My wife worked in the Chicago office too as a file clerk. But it was the first time we had ever worked in a large city. So I really admired folks like yourself. You can live in Chicago as a citizen, but if you're on the front lines, on the kinetic edge of things, man, you've got to have some serious stuff. So congratulations, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, Bill, thank you. We actually did a joint mission right there off of 55th and Shields, with Dirty World GD because they were breaking into the trains. Um, Infamously, what would happen is they knew someone that worked for the railroad. So when there were guns coming in, they told them what car to hit, where it was going to sit, how long it was going to lay there. And when we did Dirty World GD, we actually had an FBI police helicopter, a CPD police helicopter, and we hit 8 houses at one time. And I was the lucky one because I had an administrative sergeant working with me who didn't know how to do anything. I mean, he was inventorying drugs into a personal property bag, which they would just get back after they got home, right? Or went home. So it was incredible. It was a great teamwork effort. And Bill, if you're still here, thank you for your help. Thank you for your portion and the fact that you're still doing it. You said you got a meeting to go to, so thank you.
Thanks,
All
Marcus.
right, wonderful. Well, yeah, Bill Buchanan is one of our heroes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Susan Rowan, Janice Litvin, and then Paul Coleman.
Well, Bill Buchanan, when he found out that I taught at the Cabrini Green Homes my last year, was very impressed with my bravery. But I just wondered if this still happens. One of my students, James Sandifer, pulled at recess a zip gun on Patricia Goines. The police came and they said to her grandmother, "We're going to take him in. Would you like to press charges?" And the grandmother said, "You're going to take him to Cook County Jail? He's going to learn how to be an adult criminal." Didn't press charges. Guess who was back in my class after recess? And one time I confiscated a zip gun. So tell me, are zip guns still illegal? Are you seeing these kinds of things happening in the elementary schools? I know Jenner, the Cabrini Green Homes, no longer exists, the Cabrini Green Homes. But what is the link from the juvenile crime to the adult crime?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, because I'm doing juvenile processing, I had to learn some of this. Juveniles are given a 17-point presence here, meaning that until they have crimes that total 17, they're not incarcerated. They're released to a single family member. As you all know, that Illinois was one of the first states to go cashless bail. It's killing us. And just so you know, because I work in criminal registration now, I had someone who got 65 years for a murder. He did 19, and they are trying to clear the jails because it's an election year. And they let him go home on good behavior. And he said to me that he didn't understand why, as a murderer now that got 65 years and only did 19, why he has to come and register for the rest of his life and let us know where he lives. That's something he doesn't feel comfortable with. And I said, well, you always have another alternative. He said, what's that? I said, just tell him you want to go back to jail. Yeah.
Now, if he did, because we often hear, perhaps not murderers, but sometimes people come out of jail and commit another, throw a brick through a window, because at least they're getting 3 meals a day and they don't have to make any decisions.
This is true.
If someone said, I want to go back to jail, would they put him in jail?
Not actually, but I mean, if he said that to us and he didn't prescribe by whatever his probational habits were supposed to be, we have a relationship. See, where I work now, we're the mecca of IDOC, Chicago police, even out of state, because we have sex offenders that have to register in our state. We could easily reach out to his national probation, if he's has a federal probation officer, and say that this guy's not ready. They can violate him and send him back.
Okay. All right. So we have Janice, Paul Coleman, and then Janelle Barlow.
Hold on, I got one more thing for Susan.
Okay.
I know that, and I'll say this for those who don't know, I'm my mother was Jewish, so I am Jewish, and I have a lot of history with the Jewish people. I actually taught a leadership class at the Holocaust Museum. I just visited. I was in Richmond last weekend, and I visited the Holocaust Museum there. I don't know a whole lot about my faith. Don't ask me any Hebrew. I only know one word, and it's a bad word, of course, right? But the West Side is where the Jewish people began. Most of them, my grandmother went to Marshall High School, which
Who's not my dad?
it's all black. You know, she's been around longer than she knows, and she did say in her beginning question when did she ever call the police? She's never had any police family, but unfortunately, if her and my mom were that close, she now has a son or a nephew.
Very good. And my dad went to Marshall with your grandparent.
All right, good. So now, Janice Litvin.
So thank you so much. And I do know enough Hebrew, so I probably know which word you don't want to say. But thank you so much for joining us today. I've watched many, many, many police shows, including Chicago PD and New York and all those other ones. The thing that bothers me the most, and Susan alluded to it, is the issue that there are too many illegal automatic firearms or semi-automatic firearms on the streets. And so we get these mass shootings in Orlando and the schools and all these horrible, and even shootings towards politicians. What, in your knowledge or opinion or experience, what can we do to reduce the prevalence of all these guns on the streets?
I think that the response, if we put the responsibility back on the manufacturer and they start charging those cases legally and with good wit, with with professional subject matter experts telling people about what the crime looks like there and holding them accountable. I think that's what's going to need to be done. The actors, the people who enforce our public policy, who aren't acting, and they're just simply selling out for the biggest contract, the biggest money spurt in their area, is going to continue to be the problem. I think that Illinois and California have really tried to take a threshold, take a step in the forefront of doing it because it's more prevalent in those places, and I think a lot of that revolves around what the gang life looks like in those areas.
Yeah.
So I would say that we have to continue to push our congressmen to do the right thing, and not the right thing isn't to limit who has them, but limit how the manufacturers are able to manufacture them. The land of the free and home of the brave doesn't mean that you have the right to take the law in your own hands and solve your matters the best way you know how. Yeah. And again, as I said, when I talked about the Constitution, it wasn't established for people who didn't want to follow rules. It was or for people who didn't want to follow rules. It was established for people who want to lay within the limits of what the law allows you to do. So make parents more accountable. When you have a juvenile that commits a crime, make the mother do time too. Whatever
What about the father?
Well, and a lot of times, and you have to understand, in these communities, these fathers are absent.
Right.
That's why they turn to their father figure on the street, who's drug dealer or Kingpin Joe. So
right. And then drugs. I think drugs are part of it as well.
Well, that's something that crosses the border. There's not too many meth labs that start in the United States. I mean, they're here, but all of that established is coming from other places: Brazil, Colombia,
right.
Mexico. The cartel run the country in Mexico. They're the ones that allow the politicians to do what they want to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day long, but I'll defer to the next questioner.
All right, well, the next question comes from England, Paul Coleman.
Good morning, Marcus. Thank you very much for this. I must say, unfortunately, I had to come off the call for a few minutes. So if you touched upon this before, I apologize. But my question to you is: do you think there is any real or any reality that the war against drugs will be stopped, will be won? Because certainly my feeling in the UK is that the illicit use of drugs is a great sort of cause of increasing crime, and how it's really through all generations. So how is your view on that? I mean, you touched upon it just in your last answer, but what's the war of drugs and how can that be beaten?
All right. So Paul, I don't know if you know, I have a master's in public safety administration, which is all police. I'm in my last semester in my master's of public administration, which is the civilian side. It's an as we spoke about the actors, it's an unnecessary evil. Drugs are part of our economy. They're part of our lifestyle, and that's not just in the United States. That's worldwide. Um, it's almost like taking Bitcoin and stopping it tomorrow. How many people would be happy? How many people would be mad? I promise you, it would be equal in chaos. So I think that drugs can be monitored and controlled, but they will never be gotten rid of. That's not a feasible answer for our society. It's a necessary evil. And even though almost everyone in this room, except the ones that are willing to tell on themselves, right, probably has never done a hardcore drug. We probably all smoked a little bit of green weed, right? A little bit of leaf, as they call it. But it's a terrible thing. It's almost like alcoholism. There's nothing that we can honestly do, but get people help that want it. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news and tell you about the dark web and in the same sentence tell you that drugs are a necessary evil, but they are a necessary evil for this economy. These countries that buy weapons from us, and I'm not talking about Israel necessarily, but they couldn't afford these weapons if they weren't selling drugs.
Wow. That is a scary reality.
Yeah,
All right.
okay,
Well, the
thank
world
you.
wants to talk to you, Marcus. So we have Janelle Barlow, then Kathy Somerville, then Colin Hussey. All right, Janelle. And if
All
we
right.
can keep our questions relatively short, because we got a line of fans for Marcus.
Okay. Yes, Marcus, these are in your view if there's no data to support it. I accept whatever you say. What is the relation of all the people that you find commit crimes? Are most of them really stupid, or are they mentally ill? What that percentage is? That's my first question. Because my experience is that they're pretty stupid the way they commit most of their crimes. Now, my experience is reading mystery books, which I read and then pass on to Fripp. So she's probably read everything that I have read. And in those books, very, very frequently, the police lie when they're on the stand. What is your experience in terms of what's that percentage? Do police do a lot of that? I mean, like that, the guy that they killed in Michigan, standing on his neck. What's the help us with understanding what that percentage is? Can we trust these people when they're testifying in a court?
Some you can, some you can't. You don't have a whole lot of time to determine that because you're in a trial. They get 30 minutes on the stand, and you have to figure whether there was truth. What I would say is for my FBI friends that are here or people who know FBI agents is what I would say is as a juror, and I just got my summons to jury on September 5th, which they're not going to take me because I'm a criminal investigator. But what I would tell you to do is don't just listen to the words, look at the body language, look at the eye activity. If, and it's published, if you look at the eyes, one part of staring to the right or the left tells you if they're trying to retrieve information from their mind. And the other part says, are they in imagination period? Are they making up a story? I say that people who, this is why when they give a lie detector test, they put a blood pressure cuff on them. You can't tell what their blood pressure is going to do. And some people are such seasoned liars that they can lie about something so obvious, and their blood pressure doesn't go anywhere because they've been living that lie. They begin to make themselves believe those things. So I would say that do officers lie on the stand? A lot of times they do. I mean, remember, if they get caught in a lie, they lose their pension on that one dumb mistake that they made. But I can only speak for myself, and I've never lied. I've released people without charging them if I thought that the evidence wasn't good. I got in trouble. Matter of fact, the watch officer operations lieutenant asked me if I worked in IED because I told him that if he watched the video, it would be a great training video to tell officers what they don't do. raise the liability, because most big cities, i.e. San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, they don't go to court on these cases. They just pay, they pay out on them, and they cost the taxpayers. So I'm proud to say in 20 years, not only have I not shot anyone, but I've never been sued.
And then the
All right,
second,
good.
what
Yeah,
percent?
the other question, are they stupid, or the average criminal?
The average criminal is actually smart, but they're so narcissistic. They're so stuck on what they're doing is right, and no one's ever going to catch them, that they are dumb. And I know that's an oxymoron, because I just told them they're very incredibly intelligent, but they're using their well-being and their thinking in a way where it's just entirely too stupid for a normal person who follows the laws and follows the rules to see.
Well, so then that sounds like narcissism.
Yeah.
Which I think our whole country knows about at this point.
Oh yeah. Come on,
All
we
right,
can't get
so
into
let's go to
politics today.
Let's go to Colin Hussey. It is 8:55. Colin Hussey, and then Kathy.
Well, given that, drugs and guns are a reality, and shouldn't the focus be on abuse, drug abuse and gun abuse, where, because it's like, I get the feeling that every time we wage a war on something or other, the something or other wins. So shouldn't the focus be on the abuse?
It has, Colin, and what they've done in all of the cities, major cities and smaller cities, is now they've put officers that are on the street in patrol, aware of how to use Narcan. Not only do you have to, you no longer have to wait for that ambulance to come to pop it. Most officers have 1 to 2 doses and have saved some lives. But again, these are some of these people have been forgotten, and it's sad to say that. But you think about us being a sanctuary city and what they're talking about for DNC, that there's going to be an influx of migrants in the next few days. We've gotten over 45,000 migrants here, and they receive about $2,200 a month as an adult, place to live, free housing. And where are our United States veterans at? Where are our homeless business owners who just fell on hard times? They're still living in the streets, getting little to no help.
Yeah. Well, that could be a whole program in itself. All right, good. So, Kathy?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for your service as well. I appreciate that. I know and it sounds like you're well committed to the process. For somebody who, I have been in recovery for decades, so I did more than dilly-dally in the other side of drugs, knowing that recovery and restoration are not only possibilities, but when focused on, they become a reality. And seeing that, having the great pleasure of going in and out of jails and working with different women. And so I want to know where are the I know where the resources aren't, but where do you see the involving, because of lack of funds, but where do you see the involving of outside vehicles to come in, and in those places where abuse has squandered the human nature, where there's a level of restorative justice and recovery for the individual?
I think that we need to take example from programs that have been successful. Rhode Island is a big one. I just watched a movie. I had a public policy class about beginning of this last semester, about I forgot the name of the movie, Fall of Seattle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if our politicians watched it and took a step from that maybe that with that leadership, that we could implement something that where restorative justice is take order, and recidivism isn't what plagues us. We most definitely have the money and the resources to get it done, but are we spending it the right way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've worked with programs with women exiting the jail system to give them something other than catching a wrap up in the tenderloin. So it's a place of opportunity, and I just know it's not always funded.
I would say that we need more people like you. We need more people that are willing to voice it and follow up with the action. I think that we're in a really bad place with the IME world, and that if we don't get people who do things generously with a sense of humanity, they say to us every day, in every test that we get in the police department, that our number one motto is sanctity of life.
Mhm.
And I tell all my students, I said, along with that, it has to be sanity of self. Looking at the things that you look at on a daily basis, the things that you read in the newspaper, the news articles that you read, you have to have some sense of sanity. You have to have a place to let go of that. That means that you're not crazy if you see a shrink, that you're not crazy if you go sit on a couch once a week or once a month or once every 2 weeks, if that's what you need. But keeping that bottled up and stored makes you just as violent as the violent people that you are tending to on a daily basis. So I would say that, we need to, maybe we need to set up our own libertarian coalition, right? Not getting into politics, but where we take a platform. And we have a lot of people in here that have great leadership skills. I mean, Patricia, Dan, Janelle, Kathy, all of you, Pete. I mean, I could go down the whole list of the people that are in this room. But it's going to take us to continue to fight what the majority is doing or what they're saying to be successful. Like I said, and I said this in the beginning, that I don't get bored. I just think that when I find bad leadership on my job, because it's political, and Dan will tell you, because Dan's known me since I was 17, I just moved to a new cage and try to learn something new and try to help them out. And when people don't want your help, you can't force it, because it just causes the demise of yourself. So I look forward to your forum on that, and coming back and listening and giving whatever time you need out of Chicago to assist you in that, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to you. I've got a program in Chicago that I support, but I'll reach out to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and our wonderful guests, I'm sure you enjoyed hearing the real life stories from the gritty streets of Chicago. So, Marcus, thank you for joining us. Do you have any concluding comment before we let you go back to your life?
Not at all. I thank you all. I'd love to be a part. Please send me more invitations, make me a part of your organization. You all are very important people doing very important work, and just having the conversation is the first part.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcus. Thank you for my guest from Payroll.org. And with that, we hope to see you next week to see Bill Stainton talk about innovation. Remember, 29-time Emmy winner talking the Breakfast Club. We don't want to miss him, just as we like to find out how close TV is to reality. So thank you, everyone, and see you next week. Thank you, Marcus. We appreciate it. We'll keep you on the mail list.
Please
Thank you. Yeah.
Give Susan Rowan my personal information.
All right, good. And Kathy. Everyone who wants it can have